to How the Business is Played. I am your host, Sharice Williams, sports business executive, former Division I student athlete, podcast host, Jack of Jill of all trades, and all things sports business. And excited to be with you here today, fresh off of the WNBA draft. This week, I have a special guest with me, Laquita Frederick, someone that I've had a chance to know for many, many, many moons, someone who I've also admired in the industry. I had to give her a second to introduce herself and her background.
Thank you, Sharice. I am very excited to be here today. It's sincerely my privilege and pleasure to be invited. And in a quick nutshell, my name is Laquita Frederick. I too am a seasoned sports executive, but also a seasoned sports educator. Currently, I am the Chief MVP Officer of my new company, the MVP Lab. And I am a former director of sport management graduate program at Georgetown University. And I have experienced a little bit of everywhere. I have worked in college athletics, including Power 5 institutions. I think that is now Power 4, or maybe even
I think so.
And I've also worked in professional sports for an NBA team and a Major League Baseball team. So a lot of my experience is in marketing and events and promotions, but largely on the team side, whereas I know my colleague and friend, Sharice, has often been on the external side with agencies and companies.
And you know what? That's what makes this conversation really fun, because people will be able to hear perspectives from me on the brand side, the people that are spending the money, right? Paying for these things. And then on the league side, in terms of like how it all comes to life, how to ensure that the brands get what they need. With that in mind, like we are fresh off of the WNBA draft and it did not disappoint. I definitely enjoyed. I wondered how it was going to compare to last year because there was so much hype around that class. But I believe that these athletes and even the league did this job in terms of getting some new interest, eyeballs, and sponsors to show up. So really interesting. The days leading up to the draft, even draft day, we're starting to like announce the new sponsorships, right? So there was Ally. Well, Ally's been around for a while, but there was Ring, who was on the jerseys, which who was there last year? AT&T, I think it was. So I saw Ring on the jerseys, and then Coach, which threw me for a loop. And I realized it once I saw people on the orange carpet with it. This is so different from the days where the league sponsors used to kind of come from the NBA deals. Q, do you remember that when like an NBA sponsor would sign on and be like, oh, you got to take the W? And it was so bad because the W wasn't getting any of that revenue, right? It was kind of like, or very little, I should say. It was kind of a like, just throw in there. And in a way, it helped the W in that people saw really like household brands be a part of their roster. And so it kind of got things going. But now you have brands that are showing up just for the WNBA. How is that feeling to you, just to kind of see the evolution?
Personally, I love it. And I often say this. I feel like I said this like in the last 48 to 72 hours. It is awesome to see 20, 30, 40 years of women's sports be an overnight success, finally. And that counts for the W. The interesting thing for me is that I literally, this is aging myself, but I'm also proud to have been a part of it in the tiniest of ways. I worked the first ever WNBA draft camp in Orlando. At the time, my full-time role was with the Orlando Magic. I was a baby employee, aka entry level, and but I was hungry. So anytime the WNBA, NBA, in this case, because they were bringing the league to life, or ESPN, anytime anybody was in town, I volunteered. Like, what can I do? Let me hit the ground running. And I got to work that. I remember seeing Cheryl Swoops literally sitting on the sideline, pregnant with her son Jordan at the time. I remember Tina Thompson. I remember Cynthia Cooper. So I was seeing the W come to life, not knowing that here we'd be 28, I think it is, years later, 28, 20, something like that.
Years ago.
But 25 plus that we'd be here. And it, not only would it still exist, but now it has turned that pivotal corner where it's thriving as its own identity. including the sponsors that are coming to the table, and not just because it's the men, but because it's specifically women and they have their own unique needs and wants and consumer identities.
Yes, I love what's happening here. And one thing I will say though, when I look at the roster of sponsors, there's the Sephoras of the world that I feel like has a really mass appeal, meaning that no matter what shade of whatever hair, skin, nails, whatever, there's something in that store for you. Like I love Sephora as a league partner because of the fact that probably the majority, if not all the women, have at least some products they may want to purchase out there, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's self-care, makeup, whatever it may be, right? So I love that as a league sponsor. I truly do. When I saw Coach, I had a couple of thoughts, right? One, handbags are so personal, right?
Yeah.
Some people have brands that they love, and some just like colors, maybe, or styles, and they'll do any brands. But a lot of times people kind of have the go-tos that they like. And it's a personal thing. So when I saw Coach, like I was excited and still am excited to see a luxury handbag sponsor because this is amazing for the league. But a part of me wondered, one, who in the league is a Coach lover? Who of all those women are a Coach lover? Is it 10%? Is it 1%? Like I just had these thoughts around it. And I was wondering how they might bring it to life doing a league deal. Now they did have a gifting suite at the draft. And so all of those that were invited had a chance to get a bag, which was cool because they did get to pick something that matched their personal style. But I did have initial thoughts because I felt like it was such a personal category that it's hard to give that over to one brand and let it work for everyone. And I imagine some players have their own relationships, even like from a business standpoint with other brands. And I don't know, I just found that one interesting. And I love to see how that's going to play out beyond like this heat moment of the draft where they could have a gifting suite.
I totally agree. It definitely surprised me. And I feel like, even though I'm sure the partnership was in the works for a while, I feel like it punched like right at the ideal time. And I never thought about how personal it was. That like, that's a valid point. And then I started thinking about my own purse selections and who am I, partial to. And I have my partial, like, I guess, entry level luxury brands. And I have my partial for the luxury because everybody has a partial on the high end as well as the medium.
Hey, and some people think luxury is one thing. It's like, listen, we all have different ranges.
It's absolutely relative. So I too thought that was surprising. What I love though, and you just highlighted it, is that even though the partnership is new and we probably will see it play out more and where the certain players align more than others, is I like the fact that they were able to select bags and showcase bags that really were reflective of their personality. Mm-hmm. Like that was part of the fashion that I love to see. And I'm sure we'll get to that as well. But I like seeing players come to the draft and basically show us better than they could tell us who they are as people beyond the court.
That's that Southern in you, I think. Show us better than I could tell you, or whatever. My grandma say that all the time, but usually that was she's about to yoke us up. Yep. But yes, absolutely true. It is good to kind of show it than tell. Yeah, the fashion part is also fascinating. And I know we're going to talk about the players, but I would say even executives, I don't know. I felt like people spiced it up. Like Kathy Engelbert had on a Sergio Hudson suit. While it was going on, I was like, is that, I love me. I'm a stan. Love Sergio. Across my closet. And so I hit up his people like, is she wearing Sergio Hudson? And I got a confirmation that she was. And I love to see that Black designer, show up on her and even others who were there in terms of what they were wearing. Everyone really, really stepped it up this year. So you can tell that the draft is starting to feel more like an experience. And people really feel like it's a moment that you need to get ready for and show respect to. So I'd love to see that even on the executive sides, what people were wearing, in the audience. But to the women, the personalities, your thoughts around what that says around them and how that can impact them in their business.
Well, I think when they are able to show up as their authentic selves, we surprise ourselves because we have ladies that lean in and are super feminine, and some that may lean androgynous, and some that may lean masculine in their style. We get to see the entire diaspora of style, is if that's a thing, diaspora of style.
Yeah.
I can't help but think as you were talking, like, I don't even think, while we are talking about the draft, that's the centerpiece. I do think it's actually the centerpiece for a larger phenomenon, because we also are seeing style highlighted on the sidelines at the college level, particularly with the larger schools. I think of Sydney Carter. I follow her on Instagram. I'm like, where did she get this stuff? It's like phenomenal. Or even Dawn Staley. A lot of people have very strong opinions about her choices. But what I love about her choices are reflective of her. And the same thing when we look at players, when we see a player like Angel Reese transition from LSU to the W. So this year, I think we saw that again. We see, like you said, the fashion is elevated because it's no longer just a draft, it's an event. Even when they're walking in the tunnels before a game, people are capturing that. And so I love to see that sense of expression to come out. When I saw Paige, I was like, wow, I would have never guessed that black suit that she rocked. I was like, okay, I see you, and it works. So it's fascinating. It's really, truly fascinating, because at this point, it's so many directions it can go. And I think a lot of the directions we're seeing are very strategic. But the beauty of that is, if these are the things that we're seeing that are strategic, it's going to be even more phenomenal when we see what becomes organic that comes out of these things.
Oh, that's an interesting point for sure. And you're right. From a strategic standpoint, people and brands are capitalizing, on that moment. So I know we talked about Arrival recently, how they have the Sephora tunnel, like that really popped, happening there. And that's something that we anticipate will be duplicated as Sephora makes additional investments. But it's so interesting that that's now a moment that a brand is like taking that over. And then in some of the brands that I've worked with previously, whether it was in Under Armour, ensuring that Kelsey Plum is wearing Under Armour through the tunnel, whether she's got the fit on or she's carrying the shoes or whatever, and even some stuff that Sprite and Smart World have done, in terms of people carrying their products. So it's definitely a moment that eyes are on it. It's not just about what's happening on the court, to where brands now feel that would like to start to invest in it and are finding some business opportunities there. So it's definitely a phenomenon that continues to grow.
I totally agree. This draft did not disappoint, and I have a feeling that we're going to see each draft afterwards build upon it. The draft is no longer a draft where we're just watching to see where people go. The draft is, like you said, it's an event. It also sold out. So
Yes.
now we've got visibility from viewership, but you even have visibility in venue, where people want to be in the room. They want to be in the building. They want to see it for themselves. So I think that
Yes.
that's also a really exciting thing to see.
And to that point, I have not seen the draft in a while through the eyes of what consumers get to do and experience, because a lot of times we're in different places.
Yep.
But now I'm curious what that experience is. Are these brands actually creating experiences with the fans? Because the reality is, why do people get these brand sponsorships? Because they want to sell their product, not just to the athletes, but to their fans. So hopefully people are taking advantage of those of the draft and other heat moments, like I see happen at W All-Star and whatnot. So very, very interesting.
I think that's a great bounce back really quickly to the coach narrative, because on the surface, it seems like misfits. It's like, really, coaching WNBA? Like, how does that go together? Or to your point, it's super personal, like purses are super personal. But I also think that coach was super aware that the W is becoming more mainstream. For a long time, women's sports, and particularly women's basketball, has been very niche. In my experience, because like I said, I have some in-depth history with the arc from the collegiate to the pros. It was always popular amongst a certain group, a niche. But with it becoming more mainstream, I think that that's the ball that coach had their eyes on. So it's like, if we can find a savvy way to partner, we're getting in front of a new and broader audience that maybe we weren't checking for before. And we could, or it's people who are already fans of coach, but now coach gets to show up in a different way than they've been perceived before. So they get to be a bit like a chameleon, so to speak. Because sometimes we just get used to a brand looking and showing up one way, and then they surprise us, and we get a plot twist.
That was definitely a plot twist. Seeing Coach pop up like that. And I feel you on that. This is like the nerdy brand, marketer side of me that just wonders, like, who is that target consumer for Coach, and how does it match the fan base and the viewership of the WNBA? I would love to see the science come together and people realize that it's such a great fit, because I don't know, I'm a geek in that way. So I am curious to see what that was. You mentioned NCAA though, and you talked about coaches and things like that happening in college. And it's if you don't mind, it's a good pivot for me to talk about something I just experienced. So this past weekend, I was at the University of Alabama. It was my first time in Tuscaloosa. And first of all, I must say that athletic department is very impressive. It's a group that I have started some initial work with, but we got a chance. They had an NIL showcase where we had some of their partners, current partners and prospective ones, come down. And I won't get into all the details because you kind of had to be there to experience it. But I will say that I walked away really impressed with what they are doing to support their student athletes who have NIL partnerships. If you imagine, you get a deal with some brand who wants you to record something, wear something, whatever, right? And you're really just a football player or a basketball player. And maybe you're not even that great with the camera, but people want you to do these things for them. And I love that Alabama has a really strong support system to help enable that movement so that the work is really good. So I love that. And now I'm just curious as I continue to talk to athletic departments to see what sorts of support that they're giving their student athletes, because how well those student athletes do in their NIL deals are impacting their recruiting. It's impacting so many different things. So I think it's super smart to invest in their success there, because ultimately it will pay off.
I totally agree. And we see it carry over their brand appeal and even some of their deals. The person that comes to mind for me is Angel Reese, because last year, or really the year before last, she had already $1 million plus in terms of her NIL deal. She was one of the more successful athletes. In fact, I think LSU had the top 2 female athletes in terms of NIL deals. The other was a gymnast. Her name escapes me at this moment.
Livy Dunn.
Say that again?
Livy Dunn?
Yes, thank you. And so we got to see Angel really develop. She kind of had a brand, and she did what my company works with athletes, executives, and coaches to do. She kind of had a brand that was very organic, but what she did is she chose to embrace part of that identity. She said, I was okay with being the bad girl or being the bad guy or being the antagonist. And so she embraced that and she made it her own. And so that became part of her intentional brand, her strategic brand. She melded her organic with her strategic. And then we saw her bring that over. And so a lot of people were surprised to see her at the Met when she showed up for the Met Gala and on the red carpet. But that was her showing you that, I'm multifaceted. I can show up multiple ways. I can represent multiple brands, and I can bring that energy from the college level to the professional level. And so to your point, when you got to Alabama and LSU, Ohio State, any of our larger programs that have a lot of eyes and ears and viewership already, and books, if we're honest, they have the books, because sometimes it takes money, as we often say. I think that is also part of the evolution that we're seeing, is how college athletes optimize that identity, that branding, and their schools in supporting that, or even facilitating it. Because I know Ohio State, I'm a little biased because that's one of my alma mater. Ohio State is one of the programs that actually has the ability to assign each team their own NIL coordinator. So you don't have to worry about the person who's looking out for the tennis team trying to navigate that audience and navigate the same audience for football, because those are two totally different groups of people. So I think that strategy is key to synergy as they make the crossover from collegiate to pros, and or from their youthful audience to their young adult audience to as they mature as brands, as athletes, as people.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And it's really critical, particularly when you're in a sport or at a school that people don't see you, right? So it's really important that you try to, if you're trying to have, well, any life, whether you want to be a professional athlete or just in business, at this point in time, your NIL deals are like your resume at this point in time. It shows who you are and what you can do. So the types of deals you get are important to bring certain sides of you out so people can learn something about you. One deal I wasn't even aware of this until I had a chance to meet the young man, but Alabama, he just finished his freshman year, wide receiver Ryan Williams did a deal with Hollister. Like he's currently like in their campaigns right now. Yes, he is. You Google it. And it's so impressive. He shot it on a bye week. So again, like how do they maximize their time? So bye week, he flew out to California and shot it. And I think I heard them say that now Bama has like some of their their user script day, and then now they're selling some like licensed stuff out of Hollister. But I thought that was so interesting because again, football is one of the sports where oftentimes you don't see the face of the athlete. And so for Hollister, to choose him, I thought that was pretty remarkable. And for him, that was pretty exciting because to be honestly like a model, for real model, for a brand like that, that's in malls and, places that we know is super, super interesting.
Very mainstream, very non-sports related.
I love it.
Another creative plot twist. If I stick to that, it's a plot twist, but I like the plot twist. Those are actually my favorite things, is to be able to see maybe unlikely characters collaborate and come up with something that actually just hits. And that sounds like that. It actually made me think of, I'm biased to talk about women, but this conversation
navigate. No, let's do it. Talk about women.
Well, actually, I wasn't, but I'm not making a very good transition. Let me try this again. When you spoke about Ryan Williams, it made me think of Cooper Flagg. Because as recently as this week, he has not declared for the NBA draft. And I've had this conversation offline with, fans, non-fans. And I have to admit, we're both Wolfpack, so we generally default to anti-Duke. But I went to 2 Duke games, home games this year at Cameron, and I can't even take a thing away from this young man. I can't take a thing. But with that said, he has $4.8 million right now in NIL deals. And the reason I mention that is because a lot of people are saying, well, he doesn't even have to make a decision about the draft. Once upon a time, that decision would be more urgent because it is driven by money. But now, if student athletes harness their identities and they harness their brands, they're able to still monetize it and not declare until they're ready. And maybe that being ready is a mental maturity, maybe it's physical. Maybe he wants to come back and get that championship that eluded him. But you also have a young man who is very all-American. He is pretty straight-laced. He's a great player, but he seems off court to also be a solid person. And then, when do we hear scandal coming out of Duke? Very rarely. So there's such opportunity there. That's what Ryan Williams, when you mentioned Ryan Williams, it immediately put me in the frame of mind to think of Cooper Flagg because he has 4.8 million now. What he can do if he comes back to Duke. We know he'll get money if he goes to the NBA. We know it'll be bigger than 4.8 million, but the rush is not there. The urgency is not there the way it would have been had we not had NIL deals.
Yeah, and you know what else I hope NIL deals are doing is giving brands the confidence to get back in the game as it relates to player partnerships. Because what happens? Somebody has a scandal, in the pro levels, and all of a sudden, like there was an NBA player in the last few years that was getting into a couple of them. And then all of a sudden people want to start having alligator arms and pull the money back and not want to connect. But we can go on, you and I can go on and on talking about some of these brand partnerships that we've seen and the importance of the authenticity between that athlete and the brand, that story that's there and how consumers believe it and they want to also do it, et cetera. Like that is so beautiful, but brands sometimes have gotten shy. So what I love is that people are taking a chance on the college kids, right? And it's introducing, I think, people slowly but surely, even local businesses, into this idea of drafting off of someone's personal identity to help sell your business. And I love that because I feel like I can be a little partial, but I feel like athlete relationships are some of the most unique ways to truly drive your business message across, because if you pair with the right people, it'll make so much sense. People don't have to guess while you're together and guess what their experience might could be with a brand if it's similar to that of an athlete. Just a thought.
Yeah, I totally agree. The key is that pairing, like you said, is finding the right partners. If you got the right partners in terms of authenticity, chemistry, and synergy, it works for both. And it can present unlimited possibilities. And that's the thing I think people should aim for. And I would also add really quickly is not only is NIL kind of like uncharted territory, and we're seeing it real time evolve, but there's still so much room for more, particularly those student athletes in niche sports and or student athletes who fly under the radar. But to your point, maybe it's not a national deal with Hollister, but maybe it's a local deal. I know once upon a time when I worked in the marketing department at NC State, the local Bojangles franchise was huge in supporting NC State. Mm-hmm. And so maybe the local Bojangles, maybe not Bojangles across the Southeast region, but maybe the one that's in Raleigh, and maybe they share the same owner, wants to get behind a student athlete at NC State. I think those are things that we're going to see more of when people put the intention behind it. And I would also say it's not talked about enough for my taste, but the reality is, I've said this many times in other conversations, NIL is actually not legislation. Mm-hmm. It is the absence of legislation. Mm. It is the day when the Supreme Court agreed 9-0 that the NCAA was operating as a monopoly with antitrust. And having said that, NIL was like, people are entitled to their name, image, and likeness. Why did I go all the way back 3 or 4 years? Because it technically is open to high school athletes.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. We're pivoting to college sports, junior colleges, prep schools, as well as your Power 5, 3, 4, whatever the number is right now. Mm-hmm. I think that's going to be clutch for brands who want to take a scalpel approach to how they market and who they market to.
All of that. And brands just need to get in the game. I think I've said this before, like, you just got to get out there and try. Like, there's no perfect way to, do a partnership, but you're going to miss the boat if you don't get in right now and try to set the market for yourself, because it's just going to keep changing. So you have to kind of get in there and set it for your own industry, and for your brand. So glad that you went there. So let's take it back to women's. That's your sweet spot. I love it too. Lots of new leagues that are popping up, right? So we've talked about Unrivaled. We talked about Love Volleyball League, women's professional hockey, like you name it, flag football. Like, there's so many things that are happening that women can play from a professional standpoint. Some people feel like it's getting crowded and there's not enough dollars to go around in all these leagues. Some believe that it's because the audiences aren't the same across each sport, that perhaps it's still room for multiple brands to get involved and find the right space. Looks like Laquita has a point of view on which two takes would actually be real in this point in time.
My take is the latter. I don't think that it's a crowded space. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's absolutely phenomenal for 1,000 reasons. Recently, I was interviewed by the Washington Post to discuss what is happening with the Washington Spirit, which is one of the more successful and more prominent women's soccer teams. And at the center of that is Trinity Rodman. Yes, that Trinity Rodman. Yes, that Dennis Rodman. But the irony in it is, for sure, her name stands out because of her father and his gift at branding. That's how I choose to capture Dennis Rodman. Actually read both of his books. He's kind of interesting beyond his colors. But with that said, she's carved her own identity. Like, she is an exceptional player. She's super talented. She's very marketable. And so is the team. And what they did is a marketing campaign that was tied to the identity of Washington, D.C. and incorporating it at metro stations and incorporating the local landmarks and things and naming certain products and certain foods in their stadium after things that are in Washington tied to, again, those historical landmarkers. I think of that. Odessa Jenkins, aka OJ, she's one of the founders of the Women's Football Tackle League. And they've been recognized as one of the fastest growing women's sports. We are also seeing all the sports you named, but another one, and I'm surprised you didn't name it because this would be your wheelhouse, is volleyball.
Oh yeah, I love volleyball league. I mentioned that once.
Exactly. It's getting traction. I think it was it just last year that they converted a football stadium, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was for Nebraska volleyball.
Yes, and they sold out.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a crowded market. And that's why I say I'm team second option, which is it's not a crowded market. It's just a lot of new opportunities. And each of these has different identities. The person that's watching women's flag football may or may not be the person watching women's tackle football.
I was to say, even tackle football. Yeah, two different groups.
Two totally different groups. The person that's watching soccer, because a lot of soccer people are diehards and soccer starts at a very young age in terms of followership. They may not be the same people that are watching Serena Williams, although she's retired, or if I think Coco Gauff, if I think of a more current one, they may not be the same audience, the people that are watching tennis versus the people that are watching these other sports. So I think that that's the approach is, and guess what? Have we ever asked that question about men? Have we ever asked that question about men's sports? There's 1,000 men's sports. There's 1,000 men's teams. And with that said, have they tapped out? No. And we are literally a solid 25 years behind them. So yeah, we got room to grow. And if we want to be statistical about it, women outnumber men, at least in America. So
well.
Don't sleep on us as consumers, and don't sleep on us as people who are paying attention to brands. In fact, most of us are pretty brand loyal. So we'll find the brands we like and we will follow them where they go. Sincerest apologies. That is my sister.
Okay.
Oh, it must have been perfect timing. My sister trying to FaceTime and your son joined us.
Yeah, but while he's FaceTiming my sister. You want to say hi?
Hi.
You can say hi.
Hello.
I'm TT.
Okay. I always FaceTime TT.
Okay, oh, she's right there. Hi, TT.
Mommy said hi to TT.
Well,
that's the beauty of this new
well, listen, this is right. Welcome. So a couple things I was thinking while you were talking around the spirit, just in general. You were talking about how they have decided they were going to be like this brand for Washington DC. Georgia Amore is a fan of Trinity Rodman, and so she just got drafted 2 nights ago, whenever that was. And so the WNBA does this thing where famous people who are like, are fans of the athlete or know them or something, do like calls them and whatnot. And Trinity Rodman actually gave her a call and welcomed her, to DC, which is, I love that crossover between, the athletes, the leagues. I think that's just going to continue to help build things up. So I thought that was pretty cool. And that one might've been organic. I think they DM'd each other, but maybe we should do more of that. Maybe it should be on purpose. They should be connected.
As you were talking, I thought about that. Like, I don't know if it's been done because I haven't looked for it. So that's not to say it hasn't. Right. But what if not only did more women athletes crisscross across sports, what if there was opportunity for women's teams in sports to crisscross each other? Maybe they're not in season at the same time, but they can collaborate. Or maybe their seasons overlap and they could collaborate. Like, again, I just see unlimited possibilities. And maybe
I think I saw that too. I saw that the Love Volleyball League had some players in Miami during Unrivaled season, and they did some piece of content together. I didn't get a chance to follow it closely, but again, 2 first-year leagues and, prominent sports, basketball and volleyball in the US. So that was pretty cool to see. Because, gosh, the time is really flying by. I want to just kind of wrap up just as we were talking about all the leagues that are coming up. And I agree with you. There's more room. Like there's not enough spaces for brands to play in. You just find your consumer target within the fan base, the athlete, whatever, you make it work. But I also feel like some brands who have a clear value prop or a clear position can flow through all the leagues easily. So Tiffany, as an example, does a trophy for most leagues, if not all of them.
They do. They do. That
Right?
is so true.
So when I saw that they were doing the trophy for the Love League that just wrapped a couple of days ago, I was thinking, oh, that makes sense. They kind of secured that position for themselves. People kind of come to look for it. I feel like Ally does a really great job of that. Now they're all women sports, but they do a great job of ensuring that they show up where people are expecting them, and it doesn't cannibalize itself. It's just continues to grow their position within women's sports. So I do think that it can have efficiencies the more that you are involved. So you don't have to look at it as, oh, we're already sponsoring that over there, so I'm not going to sponsor this other league or other thing. Like you can actually build upon it. Just, food for thought. I know brands get a little funny thinking I checked the box on women's sports, so I'm not going to go sign up for that thing over there.
And that's to me, that's a missed opportunity if they do.
Amazing. Well, Q, I know we're at one thing. I don't know if there's anything hot that you want to, this top of mind that you're thinking about in terms of sports business that people aren't talking about. Just as we close, if there's anything that you wanted to mention, I would love to give you the floor.
I'm going to pull from the top of the conversation, and I'm going to pull from the top of the conversation, and that is executives and coaches. There is conversation and there is opportunity. We're seeing opportunity unfold with athletes and with teams. I don't think there is enough emphasis on coaches and executives, particularly women coaches and women executives. I mentioned Sydney Gardner. I mentioned Dawn Staley, but it could also be Kim Mulkey. It could also be, sorry, I'm getting texts of all times.
It happens. My child read it, so.
And now it is. But yeah, I think that is also an untapped opportunity. When I was still at Georgetown, I often thought to myself, because I have made myself, I've created my own allegiance to Nike for 1,000 reasons. And I'm like, you know what? They do some awesome campaigns with athletes, and they even do some awesome campaigns with some cultural icons. I was like, well, has Nike ever thought about the fact that most sports management professors are probably rocking Nikes? When I sat on the Georgetown stage last year for commencement, I had on patent leather Nikes because, number one, they were cute. And I found it my way to be formal without putting on heels, to walk around in pomp and circumstance all day on a campus with heels, with bricks and all that. But on a serious note, sports professors, executives, coaches, even assistant and associate coaches, anybody that has visibility probably has an audience. I don't think that that's a conversation that's being had, and I don't think those are opportunities that are being optimized. I think that is an entire lane that could be opened if brands and companies thought outside the box. And I hate that because it's such a cliche.
Yeah.
In this case, it makes sense.
Listen, outside the box. That's cute. Okay, I got that. I picked it up there the second time around. No, but you're absolutely right, though. I had mentioned something similar to the folks at Under Armour while I was there. I'm not sure that program got off the ground, but I did see the opportunity, and maybe someone will go dig up the PowerPoint and bring it to life, because clearly we're on the same page.
Yes. And maybe that is an opportunity as we pursue our portfolio projects that we could even collaborate on and bring to life.
Oh, I love it.
Experience in my executive branding experience.
I love it. See, this is how it works here. So thank you for tuning in to this episode of How the Business is Played. Again, I'm Sharice Williams, CEO, founder of Inside the Huddle, here with Laquita Frederick. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time.